restaurant owners don't fail because of the food. They fail because of operations, hiring the wrong people, running blind on finances, and trying to scale too fast. Today, Christin Marvin joins us to break down how to avoid these costly mistakes and build a restaurant that actually works. Welcome back to the Restaurant Incubator. My name is Brandon Sharp. I'm the host. As an executive chef, I earned 7 Michelin stars. And now as an owner-operator, I have 3 restaurants here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Today's guest knows exactly where the cracks show up in this business, and more importantly, how to fix them before they sink your restaurant. Christin Marvin has built a career helping independent operators scale smarter, dodge burnout, and put systems in place that actually work in the real world. From preventing costly hiring mistakes to teaching owners how to step out of the kitchen and into true leadership, Christin has seen it all: the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you've ever wondered how to build a team you can trust, keep your finances under control, or expand without blowing up your culture, this conversation is packed with the kind of strategies you wish someone had handed you before you signed a lease. So let's get into it with Christin Marvin on the Restaurant Incubator. Stay humble, stay hungry. Welcome back to the Restaurant Incubator. Today, we've got Christin Marvin with us, whom I'm really excited to have. And she's an expert in the field that I am trying to communicate everything I can about. So please, Christin, welcome to the show. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. I really, really appreciate it. It's great to spend some time with you and meet you today. So yes, I'm Christin Marvin. I prevent $500,000 expansion failures from multi-unit restaurant groups, specifically in the independent space. And I do this so that I can help them prevent overwhelm and burnout, and help them scale successfully.
So how did you come up with that specific number? I'm fascinated.
Yep. So in my experience that I have been coaching restaurant owners, multi-unit restaurant owners in the last few years, a lot of the big work that I do with them in the beginning is organizational design and making sure that they have the right leadership structure in place. And so through doing that work with people, and going through the case studies, we've been able to identify that some restaurant groups have had the wrong leader in place at a specific salary for a very long time, many, many years. Or we look at the potential cost of what keeping somebody in position for an extended period of time would be. Or when we redesign people's leadership structures, let's say, I'll give you an example. I have a client in Arizona who is expanding from 4 to 6 locations. And they have not had a lot of systems in place. And so this owner has basically let the GMs just hire as many managers as they want. And so once we sat down and really put pen to paper and put together a vision of where the company needed to go to grow and what leaders they needed in place, we ended up cutting out over $120,000 with managerial labor because one location was carrying 5 managers when they only needed 2.
Got it. Wow. Yeah, that's a that's a big savings right there. Well, you've written and coached extensively about scaling without losing your culture. So for someone with one successful location, are there 2 or 3 operational systems you can think of that they have to have in place at the first location to translate to the second location so they can expand, they can have a new idea, new concept, new menu, but the core culture stays in place?
Yeah, I think the number one most important thing is really having a system in place to measure what you're hiring for, who you're hiring for, and why. And then a way to measure that against your core values and your mission and your vision of the company. So if you're very clear on what your core values are, what your mission is as a business, right? What are we setting out on a mission to do every single day, and a vision in place of where do we want to be in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years? You've got your core values in place of, okay, what does this business really stand for? And then let's make sure that we hire people who embody those core values and who align with those core values. But taking that one step further, it's important to build behaviors around each of those core values, and then figuring out how to bring those behaviors into the interview process. Identify when you're interviewing somebody how they're going to be showing up in your restaurant on a very specific day consistently, and making sure that they are bought into what you're doing, they believe in what you're doing, and that they're a great cultural fit. Because if you don't have, I think a lot of people talk about culture,
Uh-huh.
but then you ask them, what does that mean? If you ask
Yeah.
every single employee in your company, they probably say something different, right? So
Yeah.
having it really, really clearly defined and having those behaviors behind it really clearly defined gives you the opportunity to have a lot of intention around who you're hiring, but then also coach those people to those core values through your one-on-ones, through your performance reviews, and keep your
Yeah.
culture intact.
Man, I have a million questions right now, and also feel like I'm getting all of this stuff for free because all of this stuff is going to help me a ton.
Yeah,
Um,
great.
but one of them is how I so you sit with I'm imagining here you sit with the CEO or the owner, whoever it is. These are our core values. How do you coach them on teasing out those core values so that they can hire, for people who they think will be a good fit for the culture? It's never going to be a home run. It's not going to be a grand slam or a slam dunk every time with a hire. But how do they try and tease out those values? Or do you have a specific set of interview questions? Do you have custom sets of interview questions based on the culture of the company?
Yeah, the great questions, right? The interesting, from being a restaurant owner, the beautiful thing about a restaurant is that it's unique. And the challenging thing about a restaurant is it's unique. And so and so there isn't the one size fits all approach, right? Core values are very much built from an owner's perspective, especially in the independent space, based on what the owner's values are, right? So let's say your values are integrity or their hospitality or their service. I work with the restaurant owners and operators to really dig deep into what that means, because that can mean, let's say hospitality, for example, that can mean something different to every single leader in that room. So we get really, really clear on exactly what do we mean by when we say hospitality and hospitality as a core value. And then we discuss what behaviors embody hospitality on a day-to-day basis. The way that
Nice.
you treat your employees, right? The way that you treat your guests, the way that the back of the house interacts with the front of the house, the way that we engage with our community, right? Through our social media engagement, our comments, the way that we show up for events. It's just it means so much, right? So, based on that conversation and identifying all those areas of where hospitality shows up, then we can really work together to kind of zone in on, let's create maybe three or four different interview questions in this category, and then train those to the managers so that they have, they may not be asking every single question every single time, but at least they have a guide to what the business is really looking for. Because we know that a lot of the leaders that are in the industry now have not been in the industry for a long time, especially the ones that are coming up, right? So if you can give them some sort of guide, that a measurement tool to point them in the direction and go, here's how we find who we're looking for, and then score that. Let's say that you're opening a new restaurant, you're going to interview 100 people. Use that interview sheet and create a scoring guide under each of those core values to say, on a scale of 1 to 5, where does this person lie? And then sit down and look at those scores together as a team and then make the decision.
I love the actionable answer of, or actually is a question, what behaviors embody your core values? That really takes it from the ethereal or the idealistic or whatever and puts it into action. So I think that's fantastic. The manager or the owner has made it past the hiring phase, and the managers are the coaching is ongoing. What is the proper cadence of the review after day one or week one or 90 days, and then going further, especially for somebody who's at the executive or owner level? What do you think is the right cadence of 1v1 check-ins, with people at that organizational delta, from like owner down to line level employee?
Yeah, I mean, one-on-one meetings are the single most impactful thing that you can do in your business. And I learned this lesson the hard way. I didn't understand the point of them when I was a GM coming up, especially transitioning into a brand new role as a manager and meeting a brand new team. I have opened 13 restaurants. And so when I hired the staff and I got to know the staff and I knew them and worked with them every day, I thought that that was enough to build a relationship with them. But that didn't give us the opportunity to sit down and slow down and really strategize and identify what was working really well for them and for us, and then what needed improvement and development from both our side and from the employee side. It's interesting, right? Because I think training is something that's really been struggling, since the pandemic in a lot of restaurants. And it's the first thing that I'm seeing that's going out the window when people are having a really hard time keeping staffed and finding the right people. But the
Mhm.
beautiful thing about training is when you bring somebody new into the organization and you train them for a week or two, you're automatically creating this culture of accountability and coaching. And then for some reason, once that person's out of training, that completely goes away in a lot of restaurants. So we spend all this time and energy, we build this trust, we build this relationship, we establish this open communication, and then we forget about it, right? And then we let the employees spread their wings. They're good, they got it, right? And it's in that moment between, the training ending and then their next performance review, which may not happen for 5 years or 19 years. As an employee I just talked to last week who's been with a company 19 years and who's never had a performance review.
Jeez.
Pretty mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
The time frame, I think, depends on how big your team is,
Mhm.
how much bandwidth you have, right? And what level they're at. I recommend that a restaurant owner sit down with one employee a week and spend 15 minutes. It doesn't need to be 30, it doesn't need to be an hour. Of course, it depends on where that employee is. But a quick check in and just a few questions of what are you really proud of right now? What do you think you're doing really, really well here? Where are you feeling confident? What are you loving to do? What do you want to learn more about? That's all you need to get feedback from them on some areas of opportunity in your business and start to create a development plan for them. So a GM that I used to work with was just brilliant at this, and she managed 60 high schoolers and college kids, in an industry that was 100% turnover anyway in the ice cream
Jeez.
world. And she was brilliant at this. And she sat down, she wrote out, piece of paper every week. She was very diligent with her time management. And every time she asked somebody, "What do you want to learn more about?" And they said, "Well, I'd like to learn a different station. I'd like to understand more about why the menu is designed the way that it is." Then she would deploy. She would go, "Okay, I'm gonna schedule you one shift with this person who's really great on this station, and I'm gonna have you train with them for a day." Or she'd call up the owner and say, "Hey, would you come spend 15 minutes with this 16-year-old scooper and just
Uh-huh.
a little bit of insight into why the menu is the way that it is?" And that level of intention and customization of what the employee wanted to learn was such a beautiful way to keep them engaged and to lower turnover. Yeah, it was
I
really
okay, I love that, but I want to go a little bit farther because at Hawthorne and Wood, so Hawthorne and Wood is our first restaurant. It's about 6 years old, and we have a couple of charter employees still there in the front of the house, and they are tipped employees. They're not eligible for raises, and we've started to slow the cadence of the reviews because we end up just kind of staring back and forth at each other, answering the same questions. So I love the stuff that you said already about learning something new, but for these long-term employees who they're not up for a raise, but they are super valuable employees, and their insights are priceless. What are some creative ways to tease more information or enrich the relationship that we have with them during these reviews that are still happening 5, 6, 7 years later?
Yeah, it's such a challenge, right? It's a challenge when you've got long-term employees that don't have raises. It's a challenge when you've got a GM for a single unit restaurant that's not ever gonna grow.
Yeah.
It's a challenge on so many levels, and so they're obviously there for a reason, right?
Hmm.
And so I would seek if you don't know, I would seek to really understand what is keeping them there and what's motivating them and what is helping them stay connected to your restaurant and your team because you wanna continue to cultivate that, right? Now, there's also the other side of just getting curious about who they are as a person and what they want to learn more about. Maybe there's something that you can do for them in terms of expanding their network. Maybe there's a small investment you would want to make of here's 100, maybe they love to go out to eat. Well, here's $100. Go treat yourself to a meal, but and do a little secret shop and bring back what you've learned, right? Like maybe there's a vacation that they're gonna go on, or they love to travel, and you can help them with that kind of planning. There's so many different ways to motivate and inspire your employees other than money? Because we don't want them to be there because of the money, right? Maybe they want to take some music lessons or something like that. And so you've got somebody in your network that you know that you can make a connection there. It doesn't have to always be financial, right? I know everybody's so concerned about profit and loss, these days more than ever. So it's really about connecting with them on an emotional level and understanding what motivates them in their personal life. And again, how do you help them nurture that? Because if people are living, again, it kind of goes, it's full circle with the core values. If the core values that your business has is connecting with them and they're living their core values by working in your establishment, that's how people find happiness and fulfillment, when you're living more to your core values. And they may not know that, right? So including those core values into your performance review, and again, coaching those behaviors can help them understand, oh, this is why I love working here so much. This is really important to me, because not a lot of businesses are doing that these days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to focus on people and profit at the same time, and product, and the HVAC system went out again. So
Yeah, I see your like body language. You're like,
yeah,
oh my goodness, the thought of it is too much right now.
no kidding, no kidding. Well, I want to talk about me for a minute, because I'm
Okay,
at the
great.
stage of trying to go um, from chef to CEO. So as your clients try to go from operator to CEO, as they try to go from working in the business to working on the business, there's a constant push and pull. There's a constant tug. There's a constant, feeling of guilt and all sorts of other things. So is the first move that you usually coach hire a key position? Is it, where, or is it just depend on the situation, or are there some key strategies you have there?
Yeah, so I know you and I talked about doing a podcast swap. So I would like to put this in our memory bank. We're going to schedule this before we get off the call today, but I want to coach you on this topic if you're
Okay.
open. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I'll explain what the process is. So
Okay.
here's the danger in what you just said.
Mhm.
You say, I want to go from chef owner to CEO. And so I'm going to go hire somebody that I think is going to kind of fill in for me. The danger about that is you may not understand exactly if that's really what the business needs at this stage, because things have changed a lot, right? Since you've expanded.
Yeah.
So what the right path and the important path is to think about the end in mind. So as a CEO, Brandon, and then we'll go through this, but we'll work through it on the call.
Okay.
What do you want your role to be? What do you want your lifestyle to look like?
Yeah.
What is the job that you want to do as CEO? Because again, it's not a one size fits all, right?
Yeah.
And people laugh at me all the time, like, Kristen, you're full of shit. Like, what do you mean? What is my lifestyle? What does that mean? My lifestyle. That's what I did with my business when I started almost 3 years ago. I designed my lifestyle first, and then I backed my career into it, and that helps
Nice.
me set some boundaries and some guardrails over what I say yes to and what I say no to. So it's my North Star. So you figure out what you want your role to be. You figure out what you want your lifestyle to be. You clearly define the role, and then you look at your business as a whole and you check in and you say, what roles does the business specifically need in order to be successful in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years?
Hmm.
And in that CEO role, I would say for you and anybody that's listening to this, thinking about this, we got to build in an exit strategy. A lot of
Yeah.
people get into the restaurant business and they don't think that they're ever going to get out, or they
Right.
so
Right.
that's an important part of this, because it's just an important part of any business. But um, once you start to look at your organization as a whole, and you can just whiteboard this. I had a client that did this morning. You identify what the current roles are in your organization, what
Hmm.
role you want to see in the organization, what the responsibilities are, 3 to 5 responsibilities of each of those roles, and then you look at the two side by side and you figure out what the gaps are. What are the wins? What are the challenges here? What are the gaps that are going to take us to the next level? Then you do an audit of your team and you say, okay, based on our core values and the roles that we want to have in play in the business, what team members are in the right roles right now? Who needs some additional coaching to get there? Or who's in the wrong role?
Yeah.
So then once you identify the gaps, then you're going to know if you need to go hire somebody or not. So when in the beginning of the conversation we were talking about these six-figure mistakes that people make, You may
Yeah.
go find and hire $150,000 regional manager or director of operations or a culinary director that you may not need.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. So that's how, when you start to think about your exit strategy out of your own position, you really have to look holistically at what the business needs first before you make that judgment call.
And when you're separating out these responsibilities, these categories, before you're even pairing it up with certain people that you may already have in your organization, are you looking at it side by side with financials and saying here is the ROI for each of these positions, or if it's a purely administrative position, like here's the cost and here's how we can bear it? Like, how does the financial part fit into that?
It's definitely, I mean, again, if you've got the right people in the right roles, the financial impact is going to be very minimal because you know that they're bringing a very specific skill set to what the business needs. Right now, you measure the impact based on, when you're building your vision for your business. What financial metrics do you want to use, and how are you going to be measuring success? Right.
Hmm.
Each of these individuals, yes, should have a direct return on investment to the business. But I would challenge anybody that's listening to this to be mindful and ask yourself, are you looking at your employees and your leaders as a cost to your business or as an investment to your business?
Hmm.
Very two, you will lead very differently depending on where that mindset is.
Yeah.
So if you've got a very specific CFO that's got great experience and amazing skill set, who's wonderful with the numbers, you
Hmm.
can go give that person a financial goal to keep revenue at a certain point and keep your profit margin at a certain point. You know that they're going to go get after that, right? Same thing with your leaders. If you give them 5 responsibilities and you say, look, what's important to leadership? We need accountability here. We need systems in place. You know that the outcome of those things is going to impact your bottom line.
Well, yeah, yeah, for sure. When you mentioned CFO, so I wanted to talk a little bit about technology.
Mhm.
Um, and is it, you could hire a CFO for however many $90,000 or something like that. But in the age of fractional HR, fractional bookkeeping, fractional CFOs, is there like a revenue amount for businesses that you say, okay, you need somebody full time? Are you coaching people to find these fractional services, maybe as part of their as part of their contract labor or part of services or software? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's very different based on the concept, if you're full service or you're counter service, and then again the skill set of the owner and then the role that they want to be playing, right? You're
Yeah.
right, we are in a really cool place right now where you can hire anybody on a fractional basis as you start to scale your business at a much more affordable price to your business, and then have that person grow with you, or potentially, hire somebody to train with that fractional CFO, right? To
Yeah.
position that internally to position yourself. So again, once you really understand what the roles are in your business that you need in order to be successful, then it's about, okay, understanding, do we have this person internally? Maybe they need a class to go get there to get trained up, or do we go out and micro outsource this, right? Using a combination of technology and a fractional CFO, for example. I don't know that there's necessarily a specific revenue amount because everyone's profit margins and cost of goods and prime costs are all over the map these days, right?
Yeah.
There's just so many different things that really are telling into what a very specific restaurant needs. I know that's probably not the answer that you're looking for.
No, I think the answer to most of these questions is it depends. But I just want to talk about those because I mean I didn't know that they were available until relatively recently, and it's just having worked in a hotel with a CFO and a director of sales and an HR director, all with 6-figure salaries. These things are fantastic tools for me to have, and they always want to scale up. They always want to sell more, or they always want to do more, and so that you pay a higher subscription fee and all that sort of thing. But they're fantastic services, I think, if you pick the right one.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, I talked to a fractional HR person the other day who you can hire only when you need them.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a subscription or membership thing, and there are people that obviously have that available, but it's kind of like my last episode of my show, we were talking about how to identify the right technology for your business. And again, It's just truly sitting down and understanding, what does the business need first? Step one. And then who's the right person for that specifically, right? You do the same thing with your tech platforms. You don't need to buy something that's got a ton of bells and whistles if you're only going to use 20 or 30% of that. You're overpaying. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's the same thing when you're talking about bringing somebody onto your team or outsourcing something.
Well, when it comes, let's say, I'm envisioning a chef de cuisine who is opening his own place. He's going to be the chef and owner. It's a tiny place. He has very little financial experience. Is there a simple operational dashboard that will have some financial, 3 or 4 financial KPIs that are crucial to his success or failure? Like in what direction would you point that person when it came to not a point of sale tech stack, but his financial one?
Yeah, I mean, you can hire a bookkeeper
Okay.
pretty easily, right? To send your invoices to and keep an eye on your books. And then
Mhm.
you can set up a once a week or once a month meeting with that person.
Yeah.
And then again, if you determine the 3 to 5 metrics that you want to use to measure the success and health of your business. So if you want it to be sales and cost of goods and labor, right, and EBITDA or profit margin, then yeah, that's what your bookkeeper is helping you focus on every single year.
So you mentioned before that when you were in operations as a GM, you wish you had done more or you didn't see the importance of the one-on-ones like you do now. What were some other eureka moments that you had as an operator that have informed your, success in the coaching position that you're in now?
When I was a first time GM in my early 20s, and I worked for a chef driven restaurant concept, I really had no um, responsibility over anything in the heart of the house and or the P&L. And so and I was really focused on hiring and developing and running service and making sure that the guest experience was absolutely on point, which was incredible. But I didn't
Mhm.
fully understand how everything worked as a whole. And when I started working for a group and we went from 6 to 48 locations in 7 years, yeah, it's funny, and put in
Holy
every
smokes.
went from no systems to technology in every single aspect of what we did.
Uh-huh.
Um, the most powerful thing that we did was put together a small scorecard for our teams to be
Okay.
able to look at. And our sous chef, it was so exciting to sit down and do P&L reviews with the sous chefs once a month in the
Yeah.
entire management teams, but the sous chefs, to see them light up and to see the adjustment that they had made on their food costs because they were paying more attention to avocado size and waste, that was really awesome because I think when you talk, a lot of people talk about profit and it's a very dirty word to some of the teams, but when you to some leadership teams and to some hourly teams, but when you start to teach people how to impact the numbers and how to relate it to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and how when they find opportunities in the numbers, it's an opportunity to coach, that is a huge game changer. And so learning that, being able to learn that in a very structured company that was growing really quickly, that really helped me I think it was 30 at the time, really understand how to manage the business side of a restaurant.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, back to the avoiding $500,000 mistakes. When you have single unit owners that are looking to expand, okay, so they have their core values, they have their systems, they have good people in place that they want to promote, but maybe they saw something in Tokyo or New York um, or on Instagram that's like, oh, I got to have that in my new restaurant. That's going to make it awesome. What are some of those costly mistakes that you coach them from avoiding? Maybe it's decor, maybe it's design, maybe it's equipment, but what are some common ones that you see that are just so tempting for owners who are expanding?
Yeah, I mean, it's the shiny object
Mhm.
syndrome, right? Like I see a lot of restaurant owners that open a restaurant and then everything's going great 6 months in, 9 months in, and then they get bored, right? Like
Right.
I'm ready for something else. Or like you said, they go travel and they find a concept and they say, gosh, this would work so well in my hometown. And
Yeah.
then they pull the trigger without doing the market research needed to understand if that model actually works in their market. And so, and I think a result of success also is that people start to come to you, the real estate developers, whatever, and say, or former restaurant owners. This is happening all over in Denver right now because there's so many restaurants shutting down. There's so many second generation spaces, people are trying to sell, and so they're throwing opportunities at you left and right. I've got this place. I'll make this, I'll make this deal with you. Da 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 da. And I think what the mistake is that people make is they start to move away from their vision,
Hmm.
and they don't take the time to slow down and guess check that decision against the vision of the company. Is this really helping me get one step closer to the vision that I want to achieve, or is it going to derail us? Because those opportunities sound really fun and exciting, and then you start running three on your own as a restaurant owner, and chaos sets in because it's hard to be in three places at once. It's a little easier
Yeah.
to be in two restaurants within a week's time frame, right? But three is very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, for listeners who don't have investor capital and they must bootstrap it themselves, what are some either creative revenue streams that you've seen them do like during the build out process? And also, what do you think are the most valuable proof of concept exercises that one can go through before even is signing a lease?
Mm. Great questions. I think taking over second generation space is absolutely going to save you a ton in
Yeah.
build out, in permitting, in timeline. Again, you've got, I would say, a healthy second generation space.
Yeah.
Understanding that if that restaurant was able to be successful, don't go take over a failing
Mhm.
restaurant, and understand what the numbers and the trends are there. There is, if you don't have a lot of people don't have um, investors, and they want to bootstrap this. I think again, it's being really knowledgeable about um, how how smart you need to be with your financials. If you do want to open two or three or four, what makes sense from a progression plan in order to be financially stable? You don't want to move too fast, right?
Mhm.
You need to figure out how to manage risk there. I'm a huge fan of in-kind capital. They invest in small independent restaurants,
Okay.
and they give you cash up front, and then they sell it in the form of gift cards, and they help you market the crap out of your restaurant to fill seats. It's a really
Interesting.
good mutual partnership. So they're a really good company. They've had a lot of success here in the Denver area, but they are growing. So they're a really cool resource for restaurant owners these days. I think too, there's a lot of people that are getting really creative about partnerships. You don't, do you want to open a restaurant, own 100%, or do you want to bring somebody else in? Right. And what does that split look like for you? 50, 50/50, 25/75, whatever it is. There's a restaurant in town here that I thought they opened a couple years ago, but I just thought it was a genius model. They only wanted to be open for lunch 4 days a week, and they are on a wait every day. So it's very successful. They had a food truck. So this kind of leads into your second question. They had a
Uh-huh.
food truck for a couple years and really tested their concept and
Yeah.
all over different parts of town to figure out where their target audience was, where their following was, and they tested the menu
Cool.
items for a while, and it's been wildly successful. I think they've received James Beard awards. I mean, they've just exploded in the last few years, which has been great. But when they opened their brick and mortar, they said, "Look, we only want to be open 4 days a week for lunch, but we've got to figure out how to pay this rent during all the hours of operation that we're not open." So they found a restaurant that only wanted to be open, who was another food truck vendor that wanted to be open at nighttime. So they took the evening shift, and then they found a baker that could come in and take the other third. Now it was a
Nice.
tiny space, and they've obviously run into some challenges. And one decided that they wanted a little bit bigger space, so they ended up moving on and opening their own. But it's a nice way to kind of create this stair step
Mhm.
process of dipping your toe in the water, because I think there's a lot of people that are still entering the restaurant business today that have never been in it before, and they don't understand how hard it is, right? So being very thoughtful about the right approach financially, and on your quality of life is really important.
Yeah. Oh, that is a very cool creative approach. Figure out you have three different shifts in the same space. The rent per person comes down quite a lot doing that. That's very cool. So I'm sure you coach a lot of chefs or former chefs who are, the stereotypical, bullheaded, old fashioned, old school, knucklehead, terrible manager chef. Are there a few things that you tell them right off the bat that they need to change when it comes to leadership and managing people, that don't fly either in the boardroom or the dining room the way that they do in the kitchen?
So I don't tell anybody to do anything. I sh- I help people identify the tools and resources that they already have, and I help them figure out how to sharpen those
Uh-huh.
by looking at a few different options and helping them shift their perspective.
Okay.
So I worked with a chef owner. I had a call this morning, and he said, "Hey, I had a sous chef call me. The dishwasher was broken in the kitchen, and he showed me a picture of the seal, and he said, I've got, our dishwasher said he can fix it, but he's got to run to the store to get the new seal, and we're going to be leaking a lot of water in the meantime." And the owner immediately fired off an angry text message and said, "Don't you know that we have a company that does this for us?" Right? So it's about like, and I love that example because it is about getting in underneath everything. It's like, just let's talk about what's happening right now, presently in the moment, and how you're interacting with the team. And now that we've talked about that example, what is there anything that you would have done differently next time? And let's talk in that example, the owner jumped in and solved the problem instead of helping that employee and coaching that employee on how to find the best approach to solving that problem. There's a difference, right? And so I find that some chef owners or restaurant owners, doesn't have to be chefs specifically, if you're training your staff your entire career to come to you, you're the one that's in charge and you're the one that's
Mhm.
going to have all the answers and solve the problems, you're stunting their development.
Yeah.
And you're going to burn yourself out because you can't ever take a day off because your team can't answer their own questions. So I try to help people understand that if you just take a moment and you co-design the solution with them, that you're developing them, you're increasing their confidence. They can turn around and take what they've learned and teach it to everybody else on the team, and you start to develop leaders that way. That's how you grow your restaurant group.
Nice. Well, I was grimacing and biting my fist because you might as well have been talking about me. I've sent so many angry texts that I wish I had not, and plenty of emails too. And I'm trying to get better at, but I have a short fuse. I cool off quickly, but yeah. Oh
Oh,
man,
we're
that
we're
would
the
hurt to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Well, one
But
thing that I heard.
and I would question, and if we were having that conversation, my question would be, what happened if you just what it could have been different if you just picked up the phone versus text,
Yeah,
right? And it's like,
yeah.
oh, that's the little change in leadership that can make a really big difference.
Big time, big time. Well, I can't remember if the example came from like Napoleon or some other leader or just somebody's dad who the writer asked the question, oh, well, when I asked my dad this, he just said, pretend I'm not here. Like, how do I
Mm,
do this? The answer is pretend I'm not here. So and I said that to an employee the other day, and it sounds harsh and they took it harshly, but then they realized it's a worse way of saying what you're saying already, which is like lead them, coach them to the answer on their own, because hopefully you hired people who are smart and resourceful and adept at the operation enough to come to the right conclusion on your own. But that is a very tricky push and pull because they don't want to be wrong. And my experience so far, which I'm slowly learning from, is that if I come down really hard on them for being wrong, they will stop being as proactive with making decisions, which is the opposite of what I want. So then I become, as you're describing, I become the bottleneck to the operation because nothing gets done, if they haven't run it by me.
yeah,
So yeah,
good noticing, Brandon. It's if
yeah,
you create an environment of fear
hmm
where people aren't allowed to make mistakes, then they won't.
yeah,
Right, then
yeah,
they'll stunt their decision making and their behavior, and then again, then they just become, um, you know, very, very dependent on you. Now, again, in the interview process, if you talk about, "Hey, we encourage mistakes. We want you to learn from your mistakes. We're gonna be here for you when those moments happen and talk about them." I mean, from any employee coming on, I'd be like, "Great," right? I mean, that just really
yeah,
breaks down a lot of barriers, but I love working, when you said, like, "Pretend I'm not here." Yes, that's absolutely one way to do it, but you wanna make sure that you can trust their judgment, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
if you especially if they're young and they haven't done this before, so if
Uh-huh.
in that moment you can say to them, "What would you do?"
Mhm.
What do you think? And then from there you can say, "That's great," right? You're helping them build their confidence. Like, next time a decision like this comes up or a problem like this comes up, I trust you to go with take it, run with it, right? And if you don't trust their judgment or they're missing something, then that's an opportunity to coach them and help them understand the big picture and the impact of the decision that they're about to go make.
Man, that is just pitch perfect. Thank you for putting it like that. Well, one thing that we haven't talked much on the show about is acquisitions or sales, and so I kind of want to try and ask this from both sides. When you are coaching someone, maybe it's a second generation restaurant, but it's still open, so they're looking to buy an existing restaurant, and at the same time, let's say someone is 10 years into a successful venture, the lease is running out, and they are looking to sell it. What is your approach to, first of all, valuation? How do you coach them through how much, how do they look at the restaurant and decide how much it's going to be worth? Because this seems like a huge gray area to me and the restaurant brokers that I've dealt with. And then there are some things that are grossly undervalued and fantastic opportunities to buy, and some stuff that's like, you got to be kidding me that you think your restaurant is worth that much. Do you have a formula that you use every time?
It's really, really hard because an exit strategy in sales, man, they are just having a moment right now. I'm having this conversation 2 to 3 times a week right now and have for the
Okay.
last months. The hard thing is restaurant owners are so emotionally connected to that restaurant and what they've built and their teams, and so they think that it is worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunately not the case, right? You might be able to get money for the lease, you might be able to get money from your equipment. If you want to take over the existing restaurant, sure, you've got FF&E in there, you've got the brand, you've got the logo, the signage, things like that. But there's not a lot of value to some restaurants. And so I think the most important thing is like try not to make any exceptions or get really, really excited. Go find an expert. Go find an attorney or somebody that can help you talk to an attorney so you understand the full scope of the process, because sometimes it takes years.
Mhm.
This is not a 6 month, I'm going to get out of this really, really quick. Again, it's why it's important to have your exit strategy planned before you even start to open your first restaurant in case things go wrong. Or you're having fun and you just want to get out.
Yeah.
Um, Go find an expert that's going to help you understand the legal aspect of this and the valuation aspect, because the valuation is going to cost you money too, right? I'm
Yeah.
in the process of doing this with my business right now. Uh, and then that will help you, and that'll inform you as to the right buyer that you need to go look for, right? Because you
Okay.
can start having all these conversations and making up these numbers in your head, and you're going to get really, really disappointed. You're going to get frustrated with the process. So slow down, do your homework, take it step by step.
I love it. Well, lastly, you've been through it on the operations side. Now you're through it on the coaching and leadership side. So I'm impressed that you still seem optimistic about the restaurant industry after all that you've seen and done, which is very encouraging to me. But how do you keep learning? Where do you look for inspiration and insights and things like that? Do you look outside the restaurant industry to certain authors, or where do you draw from?
Yeah, I mean, I will forever be indebted to this industry. It has taught me so much, and it's made me who I am today. I'm very grateful. I still, I love going out to eat. I love engaging with people. I love exploring new food and new concepts. I think being in a big city, there's just so much innovation that's constantly happening, and I'm still so often surprised at how many new things are coming out that I've never seen before, whether it's fusion of ingredients or different cultures coming in. So I continue to be inspired by just the creativity of the concepts that people create, whether it's a fun loud space that serves like the best cheeseburger in town, that's all has the walls full of graffiti, and they're blaring rap music, but it's clean, and the staff, we have, this is a place here in town in Denver, but ODBs, they crush it, but the staff's fun and they're engaging, and it's counter service, and it's like kitchen's open and everybody's having a good time. Like I just love the environment, so I'm inspired by that. I think, when I started coaching, I was really nervous about how I was going to be able to stay connected, actually not running around on the floor every single day.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's having conversations like this with you. It's coaching people. It's having connection calls and building an audience, or not audience, building a network of people on LinkedIn that I can connect with and hear about their wins and their challenges. Again, every single restaurant is different and every single human is unique. And I love going into a conversation with no expectations and just opening myself up to the possibilities and opportunities that could come from that. And I usually walk away and feel really inspired. And I do a little self reflection every day to capture the moments that were really awesome in the day so that I don't get stuck in the challenges and the grind of being an entrepreneur because I have burned out before in the restaurant business.
Uh-huh.
That's why I started my company. And I'm very protective of myself to not get there again.
Yeah. Well, I imagine the problem solving aspect of it is quite satisfying for you at the end of each day too.
Yeah, but again, I don't solve the problems. I just guide them to
Yeah.
where they need to
Yeah.
go. I
Well,
just show, sometimes I just show them a different way. And again, it's just making that like quarter inch turn that can change everything.
amazing. Amazing. Inspirational. Well, where can listeners find you? The socials, website, where should they go looking for you and your books?
Yeah, and I would love to, for anybody that's listening to the show, if anything that we talked about today resonates, I would love to gift you a coaching session. Let's spend an hour together, and let's talk about where you're at in your business and help you find those moments of insight. So you can email me at kristinlmarvin@gmail.com. You can come to my website, which is kristinmarvin.com, connect with me there. Or I publish daily leadership inspirational tips on LinkedIn, and that's Kristin-Marvin.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, Kristen, it's so great to connect today. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate the insights. I'm a little concerned, a little trepidatious about the return conversation because I think I'm going to stutter and mumble and give you a lot of I don't knows, but I promise I'll do my best when I'm the one
Yeah.
in the hot seat.
My job is to make people uncomfortable, so you're already there. That's great. We're on our way.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks for joining me today on the Restaurant Incubator. That was my interview with Christin Marvin. If you dig what she's saying and you want some help planning your own business, planning your own project, you want some help with budgeting or business planning, click the link in the show notes. And while you're at it, give us 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening to this podcast. We don't accept paid sponsors. We don't do ads. So the only way that we grow this show is by your help spreading the good word to people who need to hear it. So forward this episode to 2 people who have a bright, shining future in the restaurant industry. While you're at it, again, give us 5 stars. Stay humble, stay hungry.